So I'm gonna try to do everything in this stew with this little knife. Some jobs, it's not gonna be a pain, but I think other jobs, it's gonna be a pain. I was offered a peeler, but I refused it for some foolish reason. So here I'm just dicing up some bacon. We're gonna put, no, I don't know if people normally put, I wouldn't count on this for like a straight up recipe. You know, I just got a bunch of stuff and I'm gonna cut it up and get it going. So I just kind of got like a large dice of the bacon. I'm gonna render it in we got this Dutch oven over on the stove. I'm gonna throw it over there. Some of the fat will come out of it, and then I'm going to get the beef ready for the stew. So for just dicing basic stuff like this, so far so good. You'll notice I'm kind of leaning near the back of my cutting board so I'm not banging my knuckles on it too much. Dicing bacon, I'm gonna give a petty, I'm gonna give it 6 out of 10. Now this is where I was really anticipating it to be quite good. I often will use a petty knife for most of the butchery I do at home. I like how thin they are. I like how nimble the blade is. I don't know what cut this is. Is this what, a chuck roast or something?
Chuck roast.
Look at that. I'm gonna pass my test today. So I really like it for trimming silver skin. You can take just the last little bit of the knife and slip it under, you know, you just gotta get, it's okay if you're, I don't know, I don't really think it's okay to leave all this stuff on. I'm sure someone disagrees. But what you wanna do when you're removing silver skin from a piece of meat is you start where it's thicker and move back towards where it's thinner. Silver skin is really thick over around here. So I'm gonna go like that, just use the tip, poke it under, pull it up. And then when you're using your knife, you kind of want to angle the blade into the silver skin a little bit so that you're just scraping against it. And you're not leaving much meat behind, or rather you're not scooping a bunch of meat off of it. So the goal here is I'm going to, that's a fast oven, get most of the silver skin off. I'm gonna dice up this beef. I'm gonna toss it in some flour and then brown it in the bacon fat that's going on behind me. Yeah, if you're doing something that's gonna take you a little bit of time, you can kind of break the task down into different tasks or different steps or chunks. You know, by the time that bacon's finished rendering, I'll probably be ready for the next step. So think about it like if you're making a potato salad and you're gonna boil or roast your potatoes. While the potatoes are boiling or roasting, you can get everything else ready. So it all kind of comes together at the same time in the end. That's one of the big things in, at least these days in like culinary schools and whatnot, they'll get you to do all kinds of assignments based on how long you'll think things take. I think it's pretty common saying, but I had a chef at one point tell me you wanna be careful when you're working like this. Take little cuts, be sure of what you're doing because you can always cut more off, but you can't put it back on once you took it off. I'm being picky here because if you leave any of this on, you're gonna feel it later. You're gonna try to chew a piece of meat that you think is nice and soft because it's been stewing for a while, and then you're gonna find you get a little bit of tendon or something in your teeth and you're gonna be upset. I was gonna say, so in here I've got a little bit of all-purpose flour, some salt and pepper. I'm gonna make this like I was back in culinary school. We're gonna cube up the beef, toss it in the flour, and then once we kind of get the rest of the prep done, we'll brown it. And the flour from the beef is gonna be what thickens the stew. You don't wanna go too small, because then, I don't know, I think there's something kind of rewarding about having like a big piece of meat on the end of a fork when you're eating this. Maybe I'm wrong. Not usually though. I just kind of, when I cut anything, even if I'm using I find when you're using a petty for a job like this, I was doing it with the bacon too, you're kind of relying on the front half of the knife. Your knife's nice and sharp. You want to draw it through. You don't have the same, you can't chop like you had a Nikiri or a Santoku or a Gyuto, which is, I think, if I was doing this normally, I would be using a Gyuto for it. All right, beef is ready for the next step. So what, I got beef is all cut up, bacon's in the pan. Next up, we're gonna kind of work our way through a bunch of the vegetables. Some things we'll see are easier than others when we're using a knife like this. Not really looking forward to a big squash, or a squash, that's a turnip, not a squash. And then the carrot, I think I've solved the question that I had in culinary school, which was how do you peel a carrot if you don't have a peeler? I don't know, I may as well start with the carrots, I think. So what we'll do, I'm gonna, kind of like I was doing anything, I'm gonna pinch my knife here, kind of almost resting on my middle finger. You know, keep in mind that I'm left-handed. This is probably like backwards for the majority of you watching this. But I'm gonna use the heel of the knife and kind of just, I'm perpendicular to the carrot. I'm just gonna scrape the skin. It works really well if your knife is sharp. Kind of makes an annoying noise. And the carrot is kind of ragged when you're done, but it does get the peel off. That's important for something like this. Like this is a bit of an older carrot. The peel can sometimes, or the skin on it can taste a little bitter. You probably don't want that in there. If you had a little baby carrot, you wouldn't have to worry about this step. This is going about 9 million times easier than I thought it was going to. So that's not too bad. That being said, if I caught a line cook peeling a carrot like that, I'd probably smack it. Probably just grab a peeler. So petty knife versus peeling a carrot, 3 out of 10. And I'm getting carrot juice in my eyes. But it is going a lot easier than I thought it was going to. But yeah, definitely if you're gonna do that, do it back here on your knife. Don't do it up here, you'll break your knife. Too thin up there. Well, here we'll do. I like to do this cut when we're in the we do our cut like a chef class in our stores. It's called an oblique or a rolling cut. I think it looks nice. There's easier ways to do it, but it's something fun. Kind of put the carrot or any cylindrical vegetable, a parsnip or even a skinny radish or a daikon works really well. You're gonna put it kind of parallel to yourself on the cutting board. You're gonna snip off just the last that's all. It's not nice. You don't want that part. Now that you got your 45-degree cut on the end, you're going to take your carrot and you're going to roll it 90 degrees, or so that the cut spot is facing up at the ceiling, and then you're going to cut it again at 45 degrees. And you just kind of go like this, so you got bite-sized pieces. It's almost like you're sharpening a pencil, but not doing a good job. Use the tip of the knife, kind of angle it up. This would be normally I would reach for a gyuto to do this, but I will say obliquing a carrot. It's a 5 out of 10 with a petty knife. My mom, though, does everything with a knife this size. I've tried over the years to try to get her to use a chef's knife or a santoku, but she's not into it. Not into it. So, but here, we'll do it again. Cut the end off, get that out of there because it's gross. 90-degree turns, kind of a 45-degree angle at the end. Now, if I had the right knife, I could do it a lot faster. Oh, that's not too bad. But I am definitely punching the cutting board while I do this. There we go. Oblique carrots. So
Jesus Christ, that's Jason Bourne.
I've hinted at culinary school and such a couple of times here. Something they teach you when you're in school or you're working in a restaurant is this idea of mise en place. I'm sure you've seen the words pop up on a video or two of ours in the past. The idea is getting everything ready. I think it means, if you were to translate it literally, it's everything in its place. But the idea is you put all your ingredients together, you get everything to a stage in which you begin cooking, and then the whole process is a lot easier. You get to kind of play with your knives, chop all your veggies, and then you're not hustling back and forth between the stove or whatever it is you're working on. So here I'm working on some shiitake mushrooms. You don't really need a knife to pick the stems out. I suppose you could if you wanted, but then I'm just gonna cut them in half and they'll go in the stew too. Although that's not what my in-laws sound like in the slightest. So shiitake mushrooms though, halving and quartering mushrooms for a petty, that's a 10 out of 10 job. Keep your fingers out of the way, just use the tip of the knife. Onions, you probably come in contact with these all the time, relatively easy. They're round and so they scooch around on your cutting board a whole bunch, so you need to make sure that they don't. Make a flat spot. Take a little bit of the root off, cut it in half. I always cut them in half before I peel them. Some people peel a whole onion. I just think it's harder than it has to be if you do it that way. So dicing an onion, easy stuff. We're gonna cut most of the way through to the back of the root. I left the root intact. This is the part everyone gives me a hard time about. Keep it to yourself. Put in the comments that you like. I promise not to read it. And then, a large dice here. So the petty, it's pretty good for this. You find when your knife isn't as big as what you might normally reach for, you'll find yourself kind of pulling it through stuff using the front half of the knife. You know what I miss though from my chef's knife or my nikiri? That I don't get to scoop as easily. I keep doing that. You notice that? Keep trying it. I can't do it. Not allowed. Food scoops are great. Not when you're doing everything with a petty. So this guy's kind of like, it's a turnip, a rutabaga. We'll do the same thing as we did with the onion. Take the top and the bottom off. Now it's really dense. So you're gonna find using a knife this size, you're gonna wanna saw a little bit more, but it's really handy when it comes to peeling. I peel a turnip like I do a melon or even a squash, you know? You use the tip of your knife and almost just follow the curve of the vegetable. This would work for a celery root. It's how you peel an orange if you're trying to be fancy. But it's all about the little kind of saw. And I probably missed some on the bottom, but I'll just turn it over. And I didn't grade the onion in my out of 10. That is a 5 out of 10 for the onion. But for this turnip, peeling a turnip, 10 out of 10. And the shiitake was a 10 out of 10. The beef is a 10 out of 10. Peeling a carrot, not a 10 out of 10. Didn't enjoy that. So I'm gonna cut it into something a little more manageable. Kind of gotta just be careful, right? When you're gonna chip your knife, it's because you're twisting or prying or forcing it. You can do these jobs, but you just gotta pay attention to what you're doing. Just be in control of the knife. Yeah, when you're cutting something that's like gonna take up most, because ideally you want to use like the middle third of your knife. But if you're dealing with something like this, like where it's a little bit bigger, like break it down into smaller pieces so you've got a little more control. You're not having to force it on every single cut. When I'm cooking at home, the petty gets used for throwing turnips on the floor, yeah. I use my petty for a lot of butchery jobs. I prefer it when I'm, like, most of the cooking, like the last time I made a stew like this was probably a year ago. Most of the stuff I do at home, like I've got 3 kids, I'm putting lunches together, I'm cutting cherry tomatoes in half and slicing an apple and cutting a sandwich. Like a petty does get a lot of use in my kitchen. I wouldn't use it for all of these. It wouldn't be my first pick for some of what I'm doing today, but for me, it's a really great knife for butchery that can do more. I think that's kind of my favorite use for it. So if you're, we were just having a discussion here about whether or not you would peel a potato or not. Sometimes you should. The potato, like the peels are thick and they're tough, and sometimes you got a nicer potato like these and you can peel it. Now I'm not super used to doing this, but if you do like to peel your potatoes in hand like this, now this would be how my mom would do it. We talked about her a couple of times. Make sure you're choking up on the knife a little bit, that you're kind of keeping the other hand is kind of staying out of the way. If I peeled potatoes like this on a regular basis, I would probably give this an 8 out of 10. My mom does a really good job with these. If you had something like that had a lot of, strawberry, or your potato has a bunch of eyes in them, you can just use the tip, choke up on it a bit, use your thumb and just kind of twist the vegetable or the fruit to get those out of there. That's a good option too. Oh, see, now that I started peeling the potatoes, I'm gonna peel more potatoes. I'm cutting everything to be like about a large dice, 1/2 inch cubed, or as much as the vegetables will allow me to. So we got a little bit of garlic. I know a lot of people like to use their knife to smash garlic with it. That's not a move that I'm a big fan of. I will smash the garlic, I just don't use my knife for it. So I just do it with my hand, especially if that knife is small. Like you got to be careful. The blade is so small, you don't want to kind of teeter-totter it up and into your hand. So we'll use the knife after to just make it smaller. That's what knives do. Take big food and make them small. Now, with something like this, you could, like if you work at the back of your cutting board, you can use a petty like a chef's knife. But you got to make sure you're doing something small enough, right? Garlic works really well. A shallot works really well. Green onions, I guess things that aren't necessarily onions you could do. But, you couldn't do that with that rutabaga we did. You got to kind of get up too high and it's not a natural feeling at all. But this is good. Here we go. And I'm not going to mince that up because I want the garlic to kind of show that it's there. I'm not trying to hide it. So there we go, everything's all cut up. So this is the bacon that we diced up earlier. Been rendering, that's a fancy kitchen word you use to get the fat out of stuff. I'm gonna scoop the bacon out of the pan into that bowl, and then we're gonna start browning the beef that's sitting in the flour in the bacon fat. It'll make it taste good, if you like the way bacon tastes. If you don't eat bacon, you don't need to do this part. You can just use vegetable oil or butter or whatever you like. So you don't want to crowd the pan too much, right? Otherwise things don't brown, they get kind of soggy. Everyone I think knows that. But I'm shaking the flour off a bit before I plop it in there so that that flour doesn't burn. Stews are finicky things. The worst part of this is just how long it takes, you know? Like I can't really rush this or I'll break it. Yeah, I'm kind of looking for like, I want like a perfect one. Like this one here is really good, you know? You want to brown everything on all sides. You get a little bit of color going. That'll add some color to your stew. Ooh. This one here is essentially what you're looking for. It's nice and brown on most of the sides. Don't worry about like the odd little bit where you missed it, but that's kind of the color you're looking for. All right, so all the beef is browned up, the bacon's browned up, and we're gonna dump the mushrooms, onions, and garlic in here. And carrots, I guess. I forgot those were in there. All right, don't be too alarmed with all the stuff at the bottom of your pan, because that's all the, you know, from where, like the sugar from the bacon and some of the flour, and it'll all kind of soften up, and it's gonna add a lot of color and flavor to the stew when we're done. I know it can look like, oh no, I've burnt it, but it'll be fine. Don't worry about that. Oh no, our stew! Now we've got, you can kind of see all the brown stuff on the bottom of the pan, I hope. We're gonna add this beer. Oh, I forgot these things have that crazy thing in it. And then this is gonna give us, well, a lot of flavor, but it's also gonna let all, like, kind of the cold liquid hitting the hot pan is gonna release all that stuff. I don't know if I need to use all of it, but here we go. If I don't use it, I'm just gonna drink it. I'm gonna turn the heat up, and I'm gonna let this cook. I'm gonna bring it up to a simmer, let it cook down a little bit, then I'll start adding everything else to it.
A few moments later.
Ah, it tastes like a beer with a bunch of stuff in it. The beer is kind of reduced a little bit. You can see it's thickening up some. I'm gonna add, what do we got here? We got our beef and our bacon is going back in. That'll be good. I got, which one of these? I already messed up with the carrots and the mushrooms. There's the turnips. And then some potatoes. There, that's all in. And then hopefully there's enough stock here. Oh, that's actually perfect, Nathan. So next steps, we're gonna bring this up to a simmer, then we're gonna throw a lid on it and put it in the oven. So that was a bunch of salt and more. Give it another taste, make sure it's good. You gotta taste a lot actually when you're cooking. So that's something they tell you. I had a culinary instructor who told us that you have to taste something at least 7 times to get it right. You taste it and you add a little, you taste it and you add a little. It's kind of like when we were trimming the beef, like you can always add more, but you can't take it out once it's in there. A little more. That's about where you want it to get. You know, it's bubbling a little bit, but then we're gonna pop the lid on it and then in the oven at 300 for a couple of hours, and then we'll check on it and make sure the beef is tender. Oh.
Epilogue.
So, we have our stew, our beef and Guinness and bacony stew. It was in the oven for, I don't know, about 3 hours. That's hot. And you just want it, you can use your petty to just kind of check, you know, see that the meat is in fact good. You'll be able to poke in it, it'll kind of bust apart a little bit, but we're just gonna taste it, make sure that it's, you know, it's half decent. I gotta feed it to someone, you know, check the seasoning, that kind of stuff. No, it does need more salt as well. So a bit of salt and pepper. Sometimes it's nice when you've got something really rich like this, like a stew, or, you know, because that beef chuck is fatty, there's lots of bacon and then starchy vegetables and whatnot. A little splash of acid goes a really long way. This is the cider vinegar that Nathan made. He's pretty good at this stuff. That's probably enough. There wasn't a lot there, about a tablespoon. And then just kind of give it a little stir around. Stuff like soups and stews are generally better tomorrow. Like if you need to do it, like if you gotta make dinner today, that's great. But guaranteed this will taste better tomorrow. Once everything kind of gets a chance to hang out a little bit. Yep, that's what it needed was the vinegar. We did the whole thing with a little knife. So it turns out my mom's not crazy. You can do it. It's, you know what? It might not have been perfect for every single thing we did, but there were some jobs that it really did excel at, right? I really liked it for the small jobs like doing the mushrooms, cutting the mushrooms in half, trimming up the beef. I thought it was really great. I might have chose something a little bit different, like for the, if you know, that turnip was any bigger, it might not have been the best idea, but we got through everything fine. Didn't struggle. We were able to scrape the carrot clean, peel a couple potatoes. You know, I don't think there's anything that a little, you know, 135 mil petty can't do. So, I don't know. Thanks for watching. Well, you know what? It doesn't suck. Hot though. If you want to hang out and see what we can do with other knives, you know, I don't know, leave a comment below. What's a meal made entirely with the Nikiri look like? I don't know. Maybe a meal made entirely with the Tsujihiki. I don't know. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you liked it, click on the like. Subscribe to the channel. I hear about the little bell all the time. Click on that. Apparently, we'll let you know when a new video's up. So in the meantime, you can click on one of these over here. And there'll be more fun to be had. Knives. We love them. So here's an important, do I have to crochet every time I want to talk? Okay. I'm trying to do a good job, but I don't know what that is. I know food's coming, but now that I know food is coming, I want food right now.